Staff Sergeant Braxley had been breaking recruits for 15 years. He knew weakness when he saw it, and recruit Novak was the weakest he had ever seen. Too quiet, too small, too careful. The others sensed it too, circling her like wolves around wounded prey. For 3 weeks she endured their mockery in silence. Never complained, never broke, never fought back. Until inspection day, when Braxley ordered her to remove her jacket. The fabric fell away, revealing the tattoo. The serpent wrapped around a golden eagle. The laughter died instantly. The sergeant's face went pale. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of hidden strength and unexpected revelations, consider subscribing for more. She looked straight ahead and simply said, "Permission to continue, sir." Staff Sergeant Thaddeus Braxley stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind his back, as he surveyed the line of fresh recruits on their first morning at Camp Ravenwood. The Special Forces qualification course was legendary for its brutality. Over the next 12 weeks, he would break these hopefuls down to nothing before building them back as warriors, if they survived at all. 80% wouldn't make it past week 4. His gaze fell on a slight figure standing third from the end. While the others fidgeted under his scrutiny, this one remained perfectly still, eyes fixed forward, expression blank. Recruit Veda Novak. 5'7", wiry frame, unremarkable in every way except for her complete lack of visible nervousness. Braxley approached, circling her like a shark scenting blood. "Recruitment must be desperate if they're sending librarians to my camp." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the line. Novak didn't flinch. "What are you doing here, Novak?" Braxley barked, his face inches from hers. "Training to serve, Staff Sergeant," she replied, voice steady. "Training to serve," he mimicked. "Did you hear that, recruits? Novak thinks she's going to serve. Tell me, what makes you think you belong here with real soldiers?" Again, no reaction from Novak. This irritated Braxley more than if she had flinched or stammered. She just kept staring straight ahead, posture perfect, face neutral. A tall, muscular recruit at the end of the line smirked. Riker. Former college athlete with a chip on his shoulder, the size of Montana. Next to him stood Zephyr, lean and calculating, and beside her, Lorelei, whose family connections had likely secured her spot more than any physical prowess. 20 burpees, all of you!" Braxley shouted. "Now!" The line dropped to the ground, bodies pumping up and down in the morning sun. Novak moved with the others, her form precise but not showy. Braxley watched her carefully. Something about her bothered him. She wasn't struggling like the others, but she wasn't showing off either. It was like watching someone go through practiced motions while thinking about something else entirely. "Novak, front and center." She completed her final burpee and stood before him at perfect attention. "Your file says you were a logistics specialist. That true?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant." "Then explain to me why logistics specialists suddenly think they're qualified for special operations." "I want to serve where I'm needed most, Staff Sergeant." Braxley snorted. "Where you're needed most is far away from my training field. But since you're here, you can demonstrate the obstacle course for your fellow recruits." He gestured toward the crucible, a nightmare of walls, ropes, barbed wire, and mud pits stretching across the field. Rain began to fall as Novak approached the starting line. The other recruits gathered, some looking sympathetic, others, like Riker, openly gleeful at the impending humiliation. "Begin!" Braxley shouted. Novak took off at a measured pace, not sprinting like an eager rookie, but moving with deliberate control. She approached the first wall, using proper technique to scale it efficiently. Through the tire run, under the barbed wire, across the monkey bars, she moved with unexpected competence. "Not bad for a pencil pusher," muttered Calloway, a quiet recruit who had been observing everything with keen eyes. Riker scoffed. "Watch the mud pit. No way she makes it across those ropes." The rain intensified as Novak reached the mud pit, 20 feet across, with 3 ropes suspended above it. Most recruits charged across, using momentum to carry them. Novak paused, studied the ropes, then began a methodical crossing, testing each rope before committing her weight. Halfway across, the middle rope, slick with rain, slipped from her grip. She plunged into the mud below, drawing laughs from several recruits. Braxley watched as she pulled herself out, face and uniform now caked with mud. Instead of showing frustration, she simply resumed, climbing back up and completing the course at the same measured pace. By the time she finished, Braxley had already ordered the others to run the course. Riker charged ahead, athletic and confident, finishing first with a triumphant grin. Lorelei and Zephyr followed, competent but showing strain. Calloway finished in the middle of the pack, unremarkable but solid. Novak finished last, mud-covered but still composed. Braxley approached, circling her once more. "Congratulations, Novak. You've just volunteered everyone for night drills." Collective groans rose from the group, hateful glares fixed on Novak, who stood impassively in the rain. "Shower, chow, then equipment check at 1300, Braxley ordered. "Move out." As the recruits dispersed, Calloway lingered a moment, watching Novak. There was something in her eyes, not defeat or embarrassment, but a strange, distant focus, as if she were calculating something far beyond this field and these people. In the barracks, the women changed in tense silence. Lorelei finally broke it. "Why are you even here?" she demanded, blocking Novak's path. "This isn't some equal opportunity program." Novak met her gaze but said nothing. "You're going to get us all washed out," Lorelei continued. "Or worse." Still no response. Novak simply stepped around her and began organizing her footlocker with military precision. Everything aligned perfectly, folded with exact creases, arranged for maximum efficiency. Her movements were practiced, almost automatic. Zephyr noticed too. "Where did you say you were stationed before this?" "I didn't," Novak replied, closing her footlocker. The afternoon brought equipment checks and tactical introductions. Novak remained in the background, competent but unremarkable. But when Braxley demonstrated a basic disarm technique, Calloway noticed Novak's eyes tracking every movement with intense focus, as if memorizing or perhaps recognizing each step. Night fell on Camp Ravenwood, bringing the promised extra drills. 2 hours of push-ups, sprints, and bear crawls in the dark. Again, Novak neither excelled nor failed, maintaining middle-of-the-pack performance that drew little attention. At midnight, the exhausted recruits finally collapsed into their bunks. Calloway, a light sleeper, woke 2 hours later to the soft sound of a footlocker closing. Through half-lidded eyes, he watched Novak slip silently from her bunk and out the door, moving with the soundless precision of someone well-practiced in not being noticed. Curious, he waited a few moments before following. Outside, the moon cast long shadows across the training field. At first, he saw nothing. Then movement caught his eye. In a small clearing behind the equipment shed, Novak was alone, moving through what appeared to be advanced hand-to-hand combat sequences. These weren't the basic forms they'd been shown today. These were fluid, lethal movements that spoke of years of training. Her eyes were closed, her breathing controlled, each strike and counterstrike executed with devastating precision. Calloway watched, transfixed, until she suddenly stopped, eyes snapping open and looking directly at his hiding spot. He ducked back, heart pounding, certain he'd been caught. When he dared look again, she was gone. He made it back to his bunk seconds before the barracks door opened. Novak slipped inside, moving to her bunk with the same silent efficiency. As she reached up to adjust her pillow, her sleeve rode up, revealing a strange scar on her forearm, a jagged line that disappeared under her sleeve, looking nothing like an accident and everything like a combat wound. She caught his eye across the darkened room. Neither spoke, but a moment of understanding passed between them. She knew he had seen her, and now he knew there was far more to recruit Veda Novak than anyone had guessed. As she settled into her bunk, Calloway noticed her remove something from her boot, a small device that glinted in the moonlight. She turned away, but he could have sworn he heard the soft click of buttons and a whispered message. "Perimeter secure. No contact yet." By morning, Calloway wondered if he had dreamed the whole encounter. Novak was back to being unremarkable, quietly eating breakfast as Riker and his growing circle of admirers dominated the conversation at the other end of the table. Week 2 brought new challenges and an unexpected visitor. Colonel Ambrose Blackwood, the commanding officer of Camp Ravenwood, rarely showed his face during basic training, yet there he stood on the observation platform, watching their tactical simulations with hawkish intensity. "Straighten up," Zephyr whispered as they prepared for target practice. Blackwood's a legend, former Delta, rumored to have run black ops across 3 continents. Braxley seemed unusually tense with his superior watching. Firearms qualification, he barked. Each recruit will demonstrate basic marksmanship. Failure to qualify means immediate washing out. One by one, the recruits took their positions. Riker shot well, hitting 8 out of 10 targets. Lorelei and Zephyr managed 7 each. Calloway surprised himself with 9 hits. When Novak's turn came, Calloway watched more carefully than the others. She took position, sighted down the range, and fired. 6 hits out of 10. Not terrible, but nothing special. Yet Calloway noticed something odd. Milliseconds before each shot, Novak made tiny adjustments to her stance. Adjustments that seemed calculated to affect her accuracy. On her last shot, which missed wide, he could have sworn he saw her deliberately shift her aim at the last possible moment. She was missing on purpose. From the observation deck, Colonel Blackwood studied her with unsettling intensity. The afternoon brought a navigation exercise. Teams of 2 were given coordinates and sent into the surrounding forest to locate objective points. Novak was paired with Riker, much to his visible disgust. "Try not to get us lost, logistics," he sneered as they collected their equipment. Calloway, paired with Lorelei, overheard Zephyr whispering to Riker just before they departed. "Make sure her compass gets wet. Let's see how she navigates then." Sure enough, halfway through the exercise, Calloway and Lorelei encountered Riker and Novak crossing a stream. Riker deliberately bumped Novak, sending her stumbling into deeper water. Her pack, containing their navigation equipment, was thoroughly soaked. "Oops," Riker said with mock concern. "Hope nothing important got damaged." Novak said nothing, simply wrung out what she could and continued on. Later, comparing notes back at camp, Calloway was surprised to learn that despite the sabotage, Novak and Riker had completed the exercise with the second best time. "How did you manage without a working compass?" he asked her quietly during dinner. She looked up from her tray. "There are other ways to navigate." "Like what?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "The sun, moss patterns, star positions, wind direction. They teach that in logistics school?" "No," she said, returning to her meal. "They don't." Braxley increased pressure on Novak in the following days. She carried extra weight during marches. Her meals were denied for invented infractions. During one particularly grueling day, she was forced to repeat every exercise while the others rested. Throughout it all, she never complained, never argued, never showed weakness. She simply endured with the same distant focus that Calloway had noticed that first day. Then came the medical examinations. Dr. Olympia Frost, the camp's chief medical officer, processed the recruits efficiently, updating records and checking for any disqualifying conditions. Calloway was leaving as Novak entered the medical facility. He lingered outside, curiosity getting the better of him. Through the window, he watched Dr. Frost conduct the standard examination. Height, weight, blood pressure, all routine. Then came the retinal scan, standard for military identification. Dr. Frost held the scanner to Novak's eye, and something unusual happened. The doctor's expression changed, her professional detachment giving way to surprise. She glanced at her screen, then quickly reset the equipment. "Interesting," Dr. Frost murmured, just loud enough for Calloway to hear through the partially open window. Novak sat perfectly still. "Is there a problem, Doctor?" "No problem," Frost replied, studying her more carefully now. "Just curious. Your body is healed from injuries I don't see in your file." Their eyes met in a moment of silent communication before Novak left. Outside, she paused, noticing Calloway. "Eavesdropping is unbecoming of a potential special operator," she said quietly. "So is lying about who you are," he countered. She held his gaze for a long moment. "Be careful, Calloway. Curiosity has consequences in places like this." As she walked away, he noticed something fall from her pocket, a small piece of paper. He retrieved it and was about to call after her when he saw what was written on it. "I know what happened in Kandahar." Calloway looked up sharply, but Novak had already disappeared around the corner. He quickly pocketed the note, mind racing with questions. Who was Veda Novak really? What happened in Kandahar? And perhaps most importantly, was the note meant for her, or had she intentionally dropped it for him to find? That night, as rain drummed against the barracks roof, Calloway lay awake, turning these questions over in his mind. Across the room, Novak's bunk was empty again. Have you ever met someone who seemed out of place, yet somehow more prepared than everyone around them? Someone hiding strengths behind a mask of ordinary? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for part 2, where we discover just how deep Veda Novak's secrets go. Veda returned to the barracks after midnight to find her footlocker slightly ajar. Someone had searched her belongings while she was gone. The contents were meticulously arranged as she had left them, but the practiced eye could spot subtle differences. Her spare uniform shifted half an inch, her notebook rotated, the hidden compartment in her boot checked and imperfectly resealed. She surveyed the room. All the recruits appeared to be sleeping, but Calloway's breathing pattern was too measured, too controlled. He was awake, watching. She said nothing, simply closed the footlocker and slid into her bunk, mind calculating possibilities. The note about Kandahar complicated things. Someone here knew more than they should. Morning came with torrential rain, and Braxley in an even fouler mood than usual. 10-mile endurance course, he announced, as lightning flashed across the sky. Full gear, combat load. The recruits exchanged grim looks as they shouldered 40-pound packs and checked their equipment. The endurance course wound through dense forest and steep terrain, with various obstacles and challenges scattered throughout. Under ideal conditions, it was brutal. In a thunderstorm, it would be downright dangerous. First team to finish gets hot showers and warm chow, Braxley added. Last team gets cold rations and extra duties. Teams were assigned by barracks. Veda found herself with Lorelei and Zephyr, neither of whom bothered to hide their displeasure at being paired with her. Try to keep up, Zephyr muttered as they approached the starting line. The first 3 miles passed in miserable silence, rain lashing against them as they navigated increasingly treacherous trails. Veda maintained a steady pace, neither falling behind nor taking the lead. At the first checkpoint, a ravine crossing requiring teamwork to traverse, Lorelei turned to her. "We need someone light to go across first and secure the rope," she said, eyeing Veda's slight frame. Veda nodded, taking the lead line and navigating the slippery rocks with surprising agility. Once across, she anchored the rope and helped the others make the crossing. Zephyr nearly slipped at the halfway point, but Veda's quick reflexes caught and steadied her. "Thanks," Zephyr said, surprised. Veda simply nodded and continued on. By mile 7, fatigue had set in for everyone. Lorelei twisted her ankle navigating a steep descent, and though she insisted she could continue, her pace slowed considerably. "We'll never finish in time now," Zephyr complained, looking at the darkening sky. "We will," Veda said, taking Lorelei's pack and adding it to her own. "What are you doing?" Lorelei asked. "Completing the mission," Veda replied. "That's what matters, not who carries what." For the next 2 miles, Veda carried both packs while maintaining their pace, showing no signs of the strain that should have been evident. Lorelei and Zephyr exchanged puzzled glances, but didn't question the unexpected assistance. They weren't the first team to finish, but they weren't last either, coming in 4th out of 8 teams. As they crossed the finish line, Braxley's eyes narrowed at the sight of Veda carrying 2 packs. "Novak!" he barked. "Drop! And give me 50 for carrying Delacroix's gear." "Sir, I authorize the gear transfer," Lorelei cut in, surprising everyone. Recruit Delacroix sustained an injury, and tactical assessment suggested redistribution of load to maintain team speed. Braxley looked between them, suspicion evident. "Fine. Novak, report to the course again at 1800 hours for solo night run, since you had energy to spare today." "Yes, Staff Sergeant," Veda replied, face impassive. As the recruits dispersed to clean up, Lorelei approached Veda in the barracks. "Why did you help me out there?" "Team success is mission success," Veda replied simply. "I've been nothing but hostile to you." "Hostility is irrelevant to mission parameters." Lorelei studied her for a long moment. "You don't talk like a logistics specialist, you know that?" Veda met her gaze steadily. "Perhaps logistics requires more precision than you realize." Later that evening, as dusk fell and the rain finally subsided, Veda prepared for her solo night run. Calloway approached as she checked her gear. "Braxley's being unusually hard on you," he observed. "He's testing limitations," she replied. "Yours or his?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Both, perhaps." "Why are you helping me?" Veda asked, her voice dropping to ensure privacy. Because nothing about you adds up, Calloway responded. And I like puzzles. She studied him for a moment. Be careful with puzzles, Calloway. Sometimes the picture that emerges isn't what you expected. Before he could respond, Riker approached with Zephyr in tow. Heading out for your special training, Novak? Riker mocked. Maybe you'll actually learn something useful out there. Veda said nothing, shouldering her pack. Heard you carried Delacroix's load today, Zephyr added. Trying to make friends now? Just completing the mission, Veda replied, moving past them toward the course entrance. Don't get lost out there, Riker called after her, though it might be better for everyone if you did. Calloway watched her disappear into the growing darkness, struck by the feeling that Veda Novak was more at home in those shadows than here among them. The next morning brought a new evolution, hostage rescue simulation. Teams would rotate through scenarios, playing both hostage takers and rescue teams. Colonel Blackwood was present again, observing from a distance as Braxley explained the parameters. This is basic tactical entry and extraction, Braxley emphasized. Focus on fundamentals, reconnaissance, entry, target identification, extraction, team leaders, choose your operators. Riker was selected as the first team leader. He predictably chose the most physically imposing recruits, ignoring Veda entirely. When her turn finally came in the rotation, she was assigned to Calloway's team, along with Zephyr and 2 others. Novak, you're on rear security, Calloway decided, assigning her the least critical position. She accepted without comment. Their scenario, 4 hostiles. Holding 2 friendlies in a 2-room structure, standard procedure dictated careful reconnaissance, followed by coordinated entry and precise neutralization of threats before securing the hostages. Calloway had just finished outlining their approach when the scenario parameters suddenly changed. Incoming, Braxley shouted. Intelligence update. Explosives detected. 10-minute countdown initiated. Revise your approach. The team looked to Calloway, who froze momentarily under the unexpected pressure. 10 minutes was barely enough time for entry, let alone proper reconnaissance. The other team members began offering contradicting suggestions, voices rising with urgency. We should breach both entrances simultaneously, Zephyr argued. Too risky without knowing target positions, another countered. What about tear gas through the windows? Could trigger the explosives or harm the hostages. As the debate escalated, Veda quietly moved to Calloway's side. Permission to suggest an alternative approach, she said softly. Calloway nodded, desperate for any viable solution. 2 teams split, she said. First team creates distraction at front entrance, while second team makes entry through the blind spot at the northwest corner. Thermal imaging suggests most hostiles are concentrated in the main room. Enter through the secondary room, secure any hostages there, then approach main room from unexpected angle. Calloway stared at her. How do you know there's thermal imaging data? I observed the scenario setup, she replied smoothly. The equipment is standard for this type of exercise. There was no time to question further. Do it, Calloway ordered. Veda, take point on the secondary entry team. What followed was a textbook extraction. Veda moved with precision and confidence, leading her team through the blind spot exactly as she had described. They secured 1 hostage in the secondary room, then breached the main room just as the distraction team engaged from the front. The synchronized assault caught the role-playing hostiles completely off guard. Total mission time, 7 minutes, 12 seconds, no casualties, all hostages secured, all explosives defused. When they exited the simulation building, Braxley was waiting with an expression that mixed disbelief with suspicion. Behind him, Colonel Blackwood watched with keen interest. Who developed that entry plan? Braxley demanded. Calloway hesitated only briefly. Novak suggested the approach, sir. Braxley turned to Veda, eyes narrowing. And where exactly did you learn tactical entry techniques, recruit? I read the manual, sir, she replied evenly. The manual, Braxley repeated incredulously. That was a classified special forces infiltration technique. It's not in any manual available to logistics personnel. Veda met his gaze without flinching. Perhaps I read the wrong manual, sir. From the observation area, Colonel Blackwood's lips curved in the faintest smile. Braxley's face flushed with anger. Everyone except Novak, dismissed. Novak, my office now. As the others dispersed, Calloway lingered at the edge of the training area, Watching Veda follow Braxley toward the administration building, Colonel Blackwood intercepted them, saying something to Braxley that made the staff sergeant's posture stiffen even further. After a brief, tense exchange, Blackwood gestured for Veda to follow him instead. That night, Veda didn't return to the barracks until well after midnight. Calloway, waiting up despite himself, watched as she silently made her way to her bunk. "What happened?" he whispered. She paused, then approached his bunk, speaking so quietly he had to strain to hear. "You're not who you say you are you?" he asked. She studied him for a long moment before responding. "Nobody here is who they say they are. That's the point of this place." "What did Blackwood want?" "To discuss my manual reading habits," she replied, the ghost of a smile touching her lips again. "Veda," Calloway pressed, "what's really going on here? Why are you pretending to be less capable than you are?" She glanced toward the door, then back to him. "Sometimes the best way to observe is to avoid being observed in return." "Observe what?" "Patterns, anomalies, anything that doesn't fit." "Like you," he pointed out. "Like many things," she countered. Before he could press further, the barracks door opened and Lorelei entered, returning from her guard duty shift. She eyed them suspiciously but said nothing, moving to her own bunk. The next day brought a new tension to the group. Word of Veda's unexpected tactical expertise had spread, causing the other recruits to view her with renewed suspicion. Riker was particularly hostile, loudly questioning her background during morning chow. "So, what else are you hiding, Novak? Because nobody goes from logistics to special ops tactics overnight." Veda continued eating without responding. "Maybe she's a plant," Zephyr suggested, "sent to evaluate the rest of us. Or maybe she washed out of some other program and they stuck her here as a last chance," another recruit added. Lorelei surprisingly interrupted. "Does it matter? She helped complete the mission yesterday. That's what counts." Riker snorted. "Since when do you defend her?" "Since she carried my pack and didn't complain," Lorelei replied sharply. "Something you wouldn't do." The tension was broken by Braxley's arrival. "Overnight survival exercise," he announced. "Full field conditions, minimal equipment. You'll be dropped in pairs at different locations and must navigate to a central extraction point by 0600 tomorrow." Pairs were assigned, and to Calloway's surprise, he was matched with Veda. Riker ended up with Zephyr, while Lorelei was paired with a quiet recruit named Pharaoh. As they collected their minimal gear, compass, knife, canteen, and emergency signal flare, Calloway wondered if this pairing was deliberate. Did someone want him close to Veda, or was it merely coincidence? Helicopters transported the pairs to their drop zones, scattered across miles of dense forest. As they jumped from the hovering craft into a small clearing, Calloway noticed Veda scanning the terrain with practiced efficiency, already mentally mapping their route. "Extraction point is approximately 12 kilometers northeast," she said once the helicopter departed. "Terrain suggests following the ridgeline would provide optimal navigation advantages." Calloway adjusted his pack. "Lead on." They moved through the forest in comfortable silence for the first hour, Veda setting a pace that was efficient without being exhausting. As they crossed a small stream, Calloway finally broached the subject that had been bothering him. "The note about Kandahar," he said. "What does it mean?" Veda's pace didn't change, but he noticed a subtle shift in her awareness, her senses suddenly more alert. "It means someone knows something they shouldn't," she replied after a moment. "About you? About an operation that officially never happened. Were you there, in Kandahar?" She navigated around a fallen tree before answering. "Why are you asking questions you already suspect the answers to?" Calloway frowned. "Because I want to understand what's happening here. You're obviously not just a logistics specialist. You have combat training, advanced tactical knowledge, and skills that take years to develop. Yet, you're pretending to be a basic recruit, deliberately performing below your capabilities. Why?" Veda stopped, turning to face him fully for the first time. "What if I told you that sometimes the most dangerous position is the one nobody notices? That sometimes the best way to find a snake is to walk the grass as if you don't know it's there?" "I'd say you're hunting something," Calloway replied. "Or someone." She held his gaze for a long moment. "And what if that something is hunting me too?" Before he could respond, a distant explosion shattered the evening quiet. They both turned toward the sound, the direction of the camp. "That wasn't part of any exercise," Calloway said, already moving toward high ground for a better view. Veda was faster, scaling a boulder with practiced ease. From their elevated position, they could see smoke rising from the direction of Camp Ravenwood, specifically from the ammunition depot area. "We need to get back," Calloway said, reaching for his emergency signal flare. Veda's hand shot out, stopping him. "Wait. For what? That's a real explosion, not a drill." "Exactly," she said, eyes narrowing as she studied the distant smoke, "which means it's either an accident or deliberate. All the more reason to get back and help." She turned to him, expression suddenly intense. "Calloway, listen carefully. I need you to return to the extraction point as planned and wait for the others." "While you do what?" "While I find out if this is what I've been waiting for." "You knew something like this might happen," he realized. "That's why you're here." "I suspected," she corrected. "Now I need to confirm." "Not alone," Calloway insisted. "Whatever you're involved in, you need backup." Veda studied him for a moment, seeming to make a calculation. "Can I trust you?" "Yes." "Even if what I tell you contradicts everything you think you know?" He nodded firmly. "Yes." She took a deep breath. "I'm not here as a recruit. I'm investigating a security breach that may involve infiltrators within the Special Operations Training Command. The explosion could be related." "Who are you really?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that someone may be using this chaos as cover for something else. I need to get closer, observe who's moving and why." Calloway processed this information quickly. "The ammunition depot is on the other side of the restricted training area. We'd need to cross the security perimeter." "Yes." "Which is monitored by motion sensors and patrols." "Also yes." "So how do we get in undetected?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "We used the blind spots I mapped during my midnight walks." They moved rapidly through the darkening forest, Veda leading with the confidence of someone following a route they'd traversed many times before. Within an hour, they reached the outer perimeter of the restricted area, a zone supposedly off-limits to all recruits. "Wait here," Veda instructed, disappearing into the underbrush. She returned minutes later. Patrol pattern unchanged despite the explosion. Curious. Meaning? Meaning either the explosion was planned or the response is being deliberately contained. She gestured for him to follow. "Stay in my footsteps exactly. The sensor grid has predictable gaps if you know where to look." They slipped through the security perimeter with surprising ease, moving from shadow to shadow with practiced stealth. Veda's movements were fluid and silent, and Calloway did his best to mimic her technique. As they drew closer to the central compound, the sounds of emergency response became clearer. Shouting, alarms, the whine of firefighting equipment. But Veda wasn't heading toward the commotion. Instead, she led them along the perimeter toward the commander's building, a location far from the explosion site. "Why are we going this way?" Calloway whispered. "Because if I wanted to use an explosion as distraction, this is where I'd go," she replied. "The secure communications center is in the east wing." They positioned themselves in the shadows of a maintenance shed with clear sightlines to the commander's building. For several minutes, nothing seemed unusual. Personnel rushing toward the emergency, security teams establishing perimeters. Then Veda tensed beside him. "There," she whispered. A lone figure moved along the shadows of the building, approaching a side entrance. Even from this distance, Calloway recognized the silhouette. "Is that Zephyr?" "Yes," Veda confirmed. "And she's supposed to be 12 kilometers away with Riker." They watched as Zephyr produced what appeared to be a key card, accessing the secure entrance without triggering any alarms. "She has authorized access," Calloway noted. "But how?" "That's what I intend to find out," Veda replied, already moving. "Wait," Calloway grabbed her arm. "You can't just walk in there. If she's involved in something, she might not be alone." "I'm counting on it," Veda said, her expression hardening into something Calloway hadn't seen before. Cold, professional determination that sent a chill down his spine. "What's the plan?" "I follow Zephyr, you establish a perimeter. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, find Colonel Blackwood. Only Blackwood, understood? Tell him Kingmaker protocol is compromised." "Kingmaker? What does that mean?" "He'll know." Veda checked her watch. 20 minutes. She slipped away before he could protest further, moving with the predatory grace of someone trained for exactly this kind of infiltration. Calloway positioned himself with a view of both entrances, heart pounding as the implications of what they had discovered began to sink in. Minutes passed like hours. Emergency vehicles continued to arrive at the distant explosion site, but the commander's building remained eerily quiet. 15 minutes after Veda entered, Calloway saw movement at the main entrance. Colonel Blackwood himself was approaching, flanked by 2 security personnel. They entered the building with purposeful strides. 18 minutes. 19. Calloway was preparing to move when the side door opened again. Veda emerged, moving quickly but not running, heading directly for his position. "Time to go," she said tersely, taking his arm. "What happened in there?" "Confirmation," she replied, guiding him back toward the security perimeter. "Of what?" "That I'm not the only ghost in Camp Ravenwood." They made it back through the perimeter just as a new alarm sounded, different from the emergency response, this one signaling a security alert. "They've discovered something," Veda noted, increasing their pace. "Or someone," Calloway added. They pushed deeper into the forest, following a route parallel to their original path, but keeping well away from established trails. Veda maintained a grueling pace until they reached a small clearing several kilometers from the camp. "We'll rest here briefly," she decided. "Dawn in 4 hours. We need to reach the extraction point by then." "Are you going to tell me what you found in there?" Calloway asked as they caught their breath. Veda looked at him, making another of her internal calculations. Zephyr was accessing classified personnel files, specifically the files of the current training cadre and incoming recruits. "Why?" "Selection," Veda said grimly. "Identifying potential candidates for recruitment or elimination." "Recruitment into what?" "That's the question that got my team killed in Kandahar 3 years ago." Calloway stared at her. "Your team?" Before she could respond, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond their clearing. Both froze, instantly alert. "We're being tracked," Veda whispered, already moving into a defensive position. 3 shadowy figures emerged from the tree line, their outlines resolving into Braxley and 2 security personnel, weapons drawn. "Novak, Calloway," Braxley barked. "Hands where I can see them." They complied, rising slowly with hands visible. "Staff Sergeant," Calloway began, "there's been a security breach at the command center." "I know," Braxley replied coldly, "and you 2 are primary suspects. You were seen fleeing the area immediately after the alert was triggered." "That's not what happened," Calloway protested. "We saw Zephyr enter using unauthorized access. Veda followed to investigate." Braxley's expression didn't change. "Recruit Zephyr is currently at the extraction point with Recruit Riker, exactly where she's supposed to be. You 2, however, are in a restricted area with no authorization." "That's impossible," Calloway said. "We saw her at the command building less than an hour ago." "Enough," Braxley cut him off. "You're both being detained pending investigation. Colonel Blackwood wants to speak with you personally, Novak. Seems very interested in your extracurricular activities." As the security personnel moved to restrain them, Veda caught Calloway's eye with a subtle shake of her head. "Don't resist," the gesture said. They were escorted back to the camp in tense silence. As they approached the main compound, Calloway was shocked to see that despite the late hour, all recruits had been assembled on the parade ground. Colonel Blackwood stood waiting, his expression unreadable. And there, standing in formation with the others, was Zephyr, looking for all the world like she'd never left the training exercise. "What the hell is going on?" Calloway whispered. Veda's response was barely audible. "The game is changing." Braxley marched them directly to Blackwood. "Sir, the suspects is ordered." Blackwood's eyes fixed on Veda with an intensity that seemed to communicate volumes. "Staff Sergeant, prepare the recruits for inspection. All of them, immediately." Braxley looked confused. "Sir, it's 0400. "Immediately, Staff Sergeant," Blackwood repeated, giving Veda a subtle nod. As Braxley moved to comply, issuing orders for full inspection formation, Calloway leaned toward Veda. "What just happened?" "Verification," she replied softly. "And now, revelation. Ever seen a situation where the person you underestimated turned out to be the most dangerous one in the room? Someone whose quiet competence masked true power? If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts below and subscribe for the final installment, where all masks fall away and the true game is revealed. Dawn broke over Camp Ravenwood as the recruits stood at rigid attention on the parade ground. Exhaustion and confusion lined their faces. Some had been roused directly from sleep, others recalled from training exercises scattered throughout the surrounding terrain. None understood why they were assembled for inspection at such an unusual hour. Staff Sergeant Braxley paced before them, visibly agitated. His customary confidence had been replaced by a nervous energy that the recruits had never witnessed before. Colonel Blackwood stood slightly apart, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert, constantly scanning the formation. Veda and Calloway had been positioned within the ranks, no longer detained but clearly still under scrutiny. Across the formation, Zephyr maintained perfect attention, giving no indication that she recognized or remembered them from the previous night's encounter. "Uniform inspection," Braxley announced, his voice lacking its usual thunderous authority. "T-shirts only." The recruits complied, removing their outer layers until they stood in standard-issue T-shirts, shivering slightly in the cool morning air. Braxley began moving down the line, performing a perfunctory check of each recruit. When he reached Veda, he paused. His eyes flicked toward Blackwood, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Recruit Novak," Braxley said, loud enough for all to hear. "Your T-shirt violates regulation. Remove it immediately." A ripple of surprised murmurs passed through the formation. Veda stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. "Are you certain, Staff Sergeant?" she asked, her voice steady. Riker snickered nearby. "Afraid to show some skin, Novak?" "Are you questioning my order?" Braxley barked, though Calloway detected a strange undercurrent in his tone, almost as if the Staff Sergeant was playing a role he hadn't fully rehearsed. The other recruits smirked, anticipating Veda's humiliation. Throughout her time at Camp Ravenwood, she had been the outsider, the one who didn't belong, the weak link they all believed would wash out. This seemed like one final indignity before her inevitable dismissal. "No, sir," Veda replied calmly. She reached for the hem of her shirt, pulling it over her head in one fluid motion. Beneath it, she wore a black tank top that revealed her arms and shoulders completely and exposed the intricate tattoo that covered her upper back. A serpent wrapped around a golden eagle with the numbers 11-5-22 inscribed beneath it. Braxley's face drained of color. He took an involuntary step backward, looking as though he'd seen a ghost. "My God," he whispered, just loud enough to be heard across the suddenly silent parade ground. Colonel Blackwood stepped forward. "At ease, Major," he said to Veda. The words fell like thunderclaps in the silence. Major, not recruit, Major. Complete confusion rippled through the formation. Calloway watched as realization dawned on the faces around him. They had been training alongside, mocking and dismissing an officer of significantly higher rank than even Staff Sergeant Braxley. "These recruits deserve to know who they've been training with," Blackwood continued, his voice carrying across the field. "This is Major Veda Novak, sole survivor of Operation Kingmaker, the Ghost Unit's final mission." Braxley found his voice, though it came out strangled with disbelief. "But the record said all operatives were lost in Kandahar." "That's what the records were changed to say," Veda responded, her voice now carrying unmistakable authority. "Someone made sure of that." She turned to face everyone, her posture transforming completely. Gone was any trace of the hesitant recruit. Before them stood a commanding officer with the poise and presence of a veteran special operator. "And that someone is in this camp," she continued. "That's why I'm here." The stunned silence gave way to urgent whispers among the recruits. Riker's face had gone pale, while Lorelei stared at Veda with a mixture of confusion and dawning respect. Zephyr's expression remained carefully neutral, though Calloway noticed her eyes darting toward the perimeter, calculating. "All recruits except Calloway, Lorelei, Riker, and Zephyr are dismissed to barracks until further notice," Blackwood ordered. "Staff Sergeant, escort the remaining personnel to my office immediately." As the majority of recruits dispersed, still buzzing with shocked conversation, Braxley led the small group toward the administration building. Veda fell into step beside Blackwood, their postures matching as they conversed in low tones that the others couldn't overhear. Inside Blackwood's office, the atmosphere was tense. The colonel took his seat behind the desk, while Veda positioned herself to his right, clearly as an equal rather than a subordinate. The four recruits stood at attention, with Braxley slightly apart, his previous authority now visibly diminished. 3 years ago, Blackwood began without preamble. A classified special operations unit designated Ghost was deployed to Kandahar on a mission codenamed Operation Kingmaker. Their objective was to identify and extract an intelligence asset who had uncovered evidence of a breach within our special operations command structure. He gestured toward Veda. Major Novak was the team leader. The mission was compromised before it began. Of the 8 operators deployed, 7 were killed in an ambush that demonstrated intimate knowledge of their tactics, timing, and extraction plan. "Sir," Braxley interjected, his voice uncertain, "all records indicate the entire Ghost unit was lost. There was a memorial service. I attended it." "The official record was altered," Blackwood replied. "For operational security, Major Novak was declared killed in action while she recovered from her injuries. Upon recovery, she volunteered for deep cover to continue the investigation." Veda stepped forward. "The intelligence we received in Kandahar indicated a systematic infiltration of special operations training facilities. Someone has been identifying, recruiting, and inserting operators loyal to an organization outside the chain of command. Camp Ravenwood is one of their primary pipelines." Her eyes moved to Zephyr, who maintained a perfect poker face. Last night's explosion at the ammunition depot was a diversion. While emergency protocols were engaged, someone accessed the secure personnel database, specifically targeting files of instructors and incoming recruits at 3 other training facilities. "That's ridiculous," Zephyr replied coolly. "I was with Riker on the training exercise all night." "Were you?" Veda countered. "Because Recruit Riker was found unconscious 2 kilometers from your drop zone, with a mild concussion he can't explain." All eyes turned to Riker, who shifted uncomfortably. "I don't remember much after the drop. Woke up with a headache and Zephyr was gone. Figured she'd abandoned me for being too slow." Zephyr's composure cracked slightly. "He's confused from the concussion. We were together until the emergency recall." "Interesting theory," Veda said. "Except there was no emergency recall issued for field exercises. Only active base personnel were alerted." The room fell silent as the implications settled. Zephyr's eyes darted to the door, calculating distances and obstacles. "Don't," Veda warned quietly. "Security teams are stationed outside every exit, and Colonel Blackwood has already transmitted the evidence we gathered last night to command." "Evidence of what exactly?" Lorelei asked, looking bewildered. "What is this all about?" Blackwood exchanged a glance with Veda, who nodded slightly. "We believe an organization calling itself Lazarus has been placing operatives within Special Forces units for the past 5 years, Blackwood explained. Their long-term objective appears to be the creation of a privatized special operations capability outside governmental oversight, comprised of operators trained by our military but loyal to their organization. "Mercenaries," Braxley said, the word bitter on his tongue. "Highly specialized ones," Veda added, "selected for specific psychological profiles, trained at taxpayer expense, then extracted and repurposed. My team discovered evidence of this operation in Kandahar. It cost 7 good operators their lives." Her gaze fixed on Zephyr, who had given up pretense and now stood with cold calculation in her eyes. "You won't prove anything," Zephyr said, "and you're vastly outnumbered." "Am I?" Veda challenged. "How many do you have at Ravenwood? 3? 4? We've already identified and contained your contacts at Camp Levine and Fort Sherman." Uncertainty flickered across Zephyr's face for the first time. "The Ghost unit wasn't just my team," Veda continued. "It was a protocol. For every one of your people we've identified, we've inserted 2 of ours. You've been compromised from the start." Zephyr's composure finally broke. "You're bluffing. Our network is deeper than you can imagine." "Thank you for confirming its existence," Blackwood said mildly, pressing a button on his desk. The door opened and 2 security personnel entered. "Please escort Recruit Zephyr to the secured holding facility." As Zephyr was led away, her parting glance at Veda contained both hatred and a grudging respect. "What about us?" Calloway asked after she had gone. "Why are we here?" "Because each of you has demonstrated qualities of interest," Veda replied, "both to Lazarus and to us." She turned to Riker. "You're physically gifted and competitive to a fault. Lazarus would have approached you eventually, appealing to your ego and your belief that the system doesn't adequately reward excellence." Riker looked stunned. "I would never betray my country." "Perhaps not," Veda conceded. "But they're very persuasive. They don't present it as betrayal, but as elite selection for special projects with exceptional compensation." She turned to Lorelei. "Your family connections and your ability to navigate social hierarchies make you valuable for infiltrating command structures." Lorelei's face paled. "My brother," she said suddenly. He mentioned unusual recruitment approaches after his deployment. I thought he was just being paranoid. He wasn't, Veda confirmed, and he was right to refuse them. Finally, she faced Calloway. Your analytical skills and ability to connect disparate information make you particularly valuable. You noticed inconsistencies in my cover that others missed. I knew something was off, he admitted, but I never imagined this scale. Braxley looked between them all, his expression troubled. Sir, I don't understand my role in all this. Was I under investigation as well? Everyone was, Blackwood replied, including me. That's why Major Novak's operation was compartmentalized. Her cover was designed to place her in a position where she would naturally be underestimated and potentially subjected to additional pressure, revealing who might be involved in targeting vulnerable recruits. The way I treated you, Braxley said to Veda, realization dawning. That was part of the test. Yes, she acknowledged, though your particular enthusiasm for the role was noted. Braxley flushed with embarrassment. I was ordered to be especially harsh with you by Command Sergeant Major Heller. Said we needed to weed out the weak links. Heller, Blackwood repeated, making a note. Another connection confirmed. What happens now? Lorelei asked. Now, Veda said, we need your help. Over the next hour, she explained their plan. Lazarus had to believe their operation at Camp Ravenwood remained intact. Zephyr would be isolated but not publicly exposed. Meanwhile, each of the four, Braxley, Calloway, Lorelei, and even the chastened Riker, would be given specific roles in the counterintelligence operation. We're not trained for this, Riker objected. Neither was I, originally, Veda replied. But sometimes the best operatives are those no one suspects. As they left Blackwood's office with their assignments, Calloway fell into step beside Veda. All this time, he said quietly. You could have ended the humiliation with one word. Why didn't you? Veda looked at him, her expression softening slightly. Because this mission isn't about my pride, Sergeant. It's about making sure what happened to my team never happens again. She glanced at the recruits she would now lead in a very different capacity. Sometimes the best way to honor the fallen isn't with medals or monuments. It's by finishing what they started. Over the next few days, Camp Ravenwood subtly transformed. On the surface, training continued as usual, with Braxley maintaining his stern demeanor toward the regular recruits. But the inner circle now gathered regularly in secure locations, building a comprehensive map of the Lazarus network. Lorelei proved particularly valuable, her social intelligence helping to identify behavioral patterns among other recruits that might indicate they had been approached or compromised. My brother was in Kandahar when your team went in, she told Veda one evening as they reviewed personnel files. He always said the ghost unit saved his unit, but officially, they denied any special forces were there. Veda placed a hand on Lorelei's shoulder. Some sacrifices don't make it into the records, but that doesn't make them any less real. Riker, initially the most resistant, found his niche in the physical security aspects of the operation. His competitive nature channeled into something more productive as he worked to secure facilities and develop countermeasures. I've been treating you like you were nothing, he admitted to Veda during a training session. Now, I realize you're the standard we should aspire to. Not me, she corrected him. What I represent. Duty that goes beyond recognition or reward. Calloway became Veda's right hand, his analytical mind proving instrumental in identifying patterns and connections that others missed. They developed a comfortable shorthand, working late into the night, correlating intelligence. How did you survive? He asked her once when the others had left. In Kandahar, when the rest of your team didn't. Veda was silent for a long moment, her fingers unconsciously tracing the eagle tattoo visible above her collar. Luck, she finally said, and the sacrifice of my team leader. His last act was to create an extraction opportunity for one of us. I was closest to the exit point. The tattoo, Calloway ventured. It's for them, isn't it? She nodded. The eagle was our unit symbol. The serpent represents the threat we uncovered. The date, her voice grew softer, is when they fell. And now you carry them with you, always. Not just their memory, Veda said. Their mission. It's not over until the threat they died exposing is eliminated. The operation expanded beyond Camp Ravenwood. Intelligence they gathered led to simultaneous raids at 3 other training facilities, each uncovering deeper layers of the Lazarus network. Zephyr's isolation paid dividends. When her handlers attempted contact, leading to the identification of 2 senior officers involved in the conspiracy. 3 weeks after the revelation of Veda's true identity, Colonel Blackwood called the team together one final time. "The Joint Chiefs have authorized the final phase of Operation Ghost Protocol," he announced. "Thanks to the intelligence we've gathered, coordinated raids will be conducted at 12 locations simultaneously, targeting the leadership structure of Lazarus." He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on each face. "What you've accomplished here has likely prevented the most significant internal security breach in decades. Each of you has demonstrated exceptional ability under extraordinary circumstances." His eyes settled on Veda. "Major Novak's cover assignment at Camp Ravenwood is officially concluded. She will be transferring to Special Operations Command to oversee the integration of lessons learned and to implement new security protocols." A mixture of emotions crossed the faces of the team. Though they had only been working together for a short time, the intensity of the experience had forged bonds that wouldn't easily be broken. "What about us?" Riker asked. "Each of you has options," Blackwood replied. "Staff Sergeant Braxley will continue his role here, with added responsibilities for security screening. The rest of you have been recommended for advanced training programs, should you choose to accept." "Specialized counterintelligence," Calloway guessed. Blackwood nodded. "The threat Lazarus represents won't be eliminated in a single operation. We need people who understand how they think, how they recruit, how they operate, people they won't see coming." "People like us," Lorelei said, a note of pride in her voice. "Exactly," Veda confirmed. "Sometimes the most effective operators are those who don't fit the expected profile." As the meeting concluded and assignments were distributed, Braxley approached Veda privately. "I owe you an apology," he said stiffly. "The way I treated you when you arrived was exactly what I needed," she interrupted. "Your reputation for breaking recruits made you the perfect unwitting ally. If you hadn't singled me out, I might never have gained the perspective needed to identify the patterns." "Still," he persisted, "I crossed lines, said things no instructor should say to any recruit, let alone a senior officer. We all have roles to play, Staff Sergeant. Yours helped save lives." He nodded, not entirely convinced, but accepting her absolution nonetheless. Later that evening, as the final preparations were made for her departure, Veda found herself alone on the training field where her journey at Camp Ravenwood had begun. The setting sun cast long shadows across the obstacle course where she had first been humiliated, deliberately failing to maintain her cover. Calloway found her there, silhouetted against the fading light. "Thought I might find you here," he said, joining her. "Saying goodbye to the scene of your greatest triumphs?" She smiled slightly. "Hardly triumphs, just necessary steps. What will you do after the raids, once Lazarus is neutralized?" "There's always another mission," she replied. "Another threat, another challenge." Alone? She considered this. For a long time, that seemed like the only option. After losing my team in Kandahar, working alone felt safer. No one else at risk, no one else to lose. And now? Now I understand that some missions can't be accomplished alone. Some threats require a team, people with different perspectives, different skills. "People like us," he echoed Lorelei's earlier words. "Perhaps," Veda acknowledged with a small smile. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the training field was gradually claimed by shadows. "They've asked me to join a new unit," Calloway finally said. "Counterintelligence embedded within special operations training. Said they needed analysts who could see patterns others miss." "You'd be good at that." "I'd be better with the right team leader." Veda turned to face him fully. "Is that a request, Sergeant?" "More of an observation, Major." Another smile, more genuine this time. "I'll keep that in mind." Dawn broke over Camp Ravenwood as Veda completed her final preparations. The small team that had formed around her gathered for a subdued farewell. Handshakes from Braxley and Riker, a brief hug from Lorelei, a knowing nod from Blackwood. Calloway stood slightly apart, watching as Veda shouldered her pack, the same standard-issue one she had carried as a recruit, now containing classified files rather than training gear. Colonel Blackwood approached her one last time. "Ready to hunt ghosts, Major?" She tucked a photo of her former team into her pocket. "No, sir." "Ready to become one again?" As they walked toward the waiting transport, The rising sun illuminated her back, highlighting the eagle and serpent tattoo visible through her light shirt, a constant reminder of why she had come and the promise she had made to those who couldn't leave with her. The team watched as the helicopter lifted off, carrying Veda toward the next phase of an operation years in the making. Though her time with them had been brief, she had transformed each of them, from Braxley's newfound humility to Riker's redirected ambition, from Lorelei's awakened purpose to Calloway's refined perception. None of them would see the world the same way again. They had been shown that appearances could be deceiving, that strength wasn't always obvious, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room was the one you should fear most. As the helicopter disappeared from view, Calloway's hand moved unconsciously to his forearm, where a small tattoo was still healing. Not the eagle and serpent of the ghost unit, but a simple, watchful eye, the symbol of the new team being formed in its wake. The transport was barely a speck in the distance when his secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. Team selection in progress. Analysts with pattern recognition skills highest priority. Report to Fort Benning, 0800 Tuesday. The serpent has more heads. We'll need good eyes. He smiled, knowing that what had begun as one woman's quest for justice had evolved into something larger. A mission that would require not just skill and courage, but the ability to stand unnoticed in plain sight, watching and waiting for the moment to strike, just as Veda had done. The camera pulled back one final time, revealing someone watching the Camp Ravenwood proceedings through a scope from a distant ridge. The observer transmitted a brief message before disappearing into the tree line. She's activated. Protocol Lazarus is compromised. But what the observer couldn't know was that the transmission was already being tracked, the signal already traced to its destination. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and leading the pursuit would be a quiet, unassuming major with an eagle tattoo and 7 names written on her heart. Have you ever witnessed someone silently endure disrespect, knowing they held power others couldn't imagine? Share your stories of hidden strength and quiet resilience in the comments. And if you believe that true leadership means sacrifice without recognition, subscribe for more stories that honor the hidden heroes walking among us.